Before we move forward and introduce the editor-in-chief of FightSaga, we do have to remind everyone that this show is brought to you by Box.Buzz. Guys, for all the latest boxing news, please visit Box.Buzz, B-U-Z-Z. It serves as your hub for all the latest information, linking into all the major media boxing outlets. But let's get this show on the road. We have about 60 minutes to play with and go over our final Charlo pay-per-view preview. We've got big news regarding Manny Pacquiao versus Conor McGregor. And then we also are going to talk about the latest developments in the ongoing Canelo DAZN Golden Boy negotiations. But, guys, this wouldn't be FightSaga Radio without the counsel of the editor-in-chief of FightSaga, the one and only Mr. Lee Cleveland. Lee, how the heck are you, brother?
Yes, sir. Glad to be here. Happy
to
be here.
It's good to have you, man.
Look forward to talking about some boxing.
Happy Friday, brother. And I tell you what, man, I am really looking forward to all of this. I'm really looking forward to this show on Saturday night. Once again, it's the big Showtime pay-per-view, the Charlo Twin Bill. I absolutely love the doubleheader fights, the two main events, right? And we guessed this, and we figured it out, why these are spaced out as basically two Showtime cards for one big pay-per-view price of $75. And that's all to, well, cater to the fragile psyche and emotional nature of one Jermall Charlo. If you had to guess, Lee, is this a good or bad sign for Mr. Jermall Charlo in what is viewed as, well, his toughest test to date?
Well, they're certainly making preparations. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, but it does sound like there might be a little lack of confidence there, because of the change. He doesn't want to have a situation where he goes right into the ring right after his brother loses. I don't know. There might be some lack of confidence, but at the same time, it could be wisdom, because you never know what could happen. We'll see on fight night.
Yeah, very good, guys. And the fight is going down on tomorrow evening. All four fighters made weight this morning at about 11 a.m. Very early weigh-in time, so the fighters could properly hydrate and get back to their hotel room. And from what Ronnie Shields told me, yes, it's very restrictive. The lodgings and the accommodations, you're limited to the amount of time in the sauna or the gym. You're restricted to certain times. I guess to accommodate all of the competing fighters, they don't want everyone in the gym at the same time at the Mohegan Sun. I'm assuming that's why they wanted the weigh-in that early. But all four fighters in the co-main event and the main event, respectively, they all made weight. So we're going to have two fights, and all the titles will definitely be on the line. Now, we're going to go into the odds. We're going to go into how we think the pay-per-view will perform tomorrow night. And once again, a lot of people are bellyaching about the price, Lee. And ever since this was announced, people have been bellyaching about this. Diehard fans have been complaining about having to pay $75. And it's funny, a UFC event is going to be going on at the same time tomorrow night. And I haven't heard any of the UFC fans complaining about having to pay for another event. Do you have any theories as to why, my friend?
Well, of course. It's because, fights like, fight cards like Derevyanchenko versus Charlo, great card, competitive card, but that's more of a Showtime or HBO card. So fight fans, through the years, we're used to watching that free on HBO or Showtime. Well, not necessarily free, but subscription free. We're not used to having to pay money for this. We're used to having to pay money for the big guns, like the Mayweathers and the Pacquiaos and the Tysons. So we're not used to this. So, yeah, people are bellyaching because, again, this is a fight this is a Showtime fight, a fight card. A darn good one, but this is still an HBO or Showtime fight card. So, That's exactly why. Whereas the UFC guys, they're used to they were weaned on this. They're used to paying a certain amount for each of these UFCs. Minus the few that have been on Fox or Spike TV, they're used to this. This is something normal. So right now, boxing fans don't have that mindset because we're only used to paying for the big guns, like the really big guns, for the Canelos and so forth.
That is such a good point, and you're absolutely right. Since the conception of the UFC back in the 90s, they've always been pay-per-view events. Now, back in the day, in the early 90s, they were as low as $19.95, but yes, they were always offered for a price. And the UFC fans now expect it. You're absolutely right. That's such a good point. Just like I said, it's so tomorrow night, UFC, and even if you're an ESPN Plus subscriber and pay that $4.99 a month, the event is still going to cost you $64.99. And UFC fans don't care. They already planned for this. Is this something that boxing fans will have to look forward to? Because I don't see these fights getting any easier to make unless these fighters want to make more concessions. Because it just seems to me that, I don't see any networks being, and once again, this is because of the ratings. They do not want to pay millions of dollars for these events without the added revenue stream of the pay-per-view. Like when you look at Charlo versus Hogan that took place last December, right, his most recent fight, Jermall, I'm referring to, and that took place at the Barclays Center. It peaked at 275,000 viewers for Showtime. And then this guy is being thrust on pay-per-view now. Well, that's the reason why, guys. This is on pay-per-view, and it has nothing to do with, these guys being pay-per-view stars or being rock stars or being huge global commodities in the sports entertainment business. This has everything to do with, Steven Espinosa and the Showtime stockholders do not want to pay for this entertainment, this brand of entertainment, this product, without the benefit of the added revenue stream. And I'm a little shocked, Lee, that Al Heyman didn't try to sell this to maybe CBS.
Well, maybe. Again, Charlo and Derevyanchenko, are you going to get that? Are you going to get those advertisers? Are you going to have those big followings? Probably. You might not. Again, for the money these guys are looking for, to me it makes more sense. Ideally, this fight would be a DAZN fight or an ESPN fight. But like you said, and it makes a lot of sense. Showtime doesn't want to buy it because this is not going to get them anywhere. It's not going to advance. It's not going to advance their agenda. They're not going to get all of these subscriptions and all this revenue from purchasing this fight. So there's no upside for them, and that more has to do with the change in revenue model because of all the apps and Netflix and so on. I don't know. I will say this, Joseph. Yeah, $79 is not the answer, and I think we'll see that in the coming weeks when the numbers come out. That's not the answer, but it is the answer for Saturday. But that's not going to be I don't see this being something that will be typical. I really don't.
Yeah, I hope not once the pandemic, subsides, once things get back to normal. This is what Steven Espinosa had to say, though, about all of the complaints from the media members and the fans as well, blowing his account up on Twitter, right? Steven Espinosa did, as reported by The Athletic. He said, I understand that there are a lot of people in this environment that are under financial pressures. Of course, that's an impediment for the pay-per-view, but as a general comment, I don't understand the complaints about the pay-per-view price. This, the same price that it's been for years, and it's double of what you typically get from a pay-per-view. Actually, it's more than doubled because the quality of the fights up and down the card is way beyond the norm. We hear boxing fans asking for, well, we want the best fighting the best. Okay. Well, how about a top 3 guy in the division against another top 3 guy in the division? Or how about a unification fight with 3 belts on the line? Okay, well, in my opinion, that's the best fighting the best. End quote. He seems to think that it's just, and once again, we've talked about this on the show earlier or in previous programs, that, boxing fans, I think they've kind of been tricked into thinking that it's a more enlightened way of thinking, or it's a more intelligent way of thinking, to consistently find fault in the product and to constantly bellyache about things. Or do they have a reasonable argument here?
I think both, and here's why, Joseph. Well, number one, for the reasons that I mentioned earlier, fans are complaining because they're not used to this fight being $79. They're used to this fight being on HBO or Showtime. We get that. We understand that. It's just the changing times. It's part of it's the virus. Part of it is technology with these apps. Part of it is the decrease in relevance, so to speak, of HBO and Showtime overall. As far as paying, I mean, yes, these are great matchups. You can't ask for much better. But these aren't big names, Joseph. These are not. Fans expect to pay money for the big names, the Pacquiaos and the Mayweathers, regardless of 1 versus 2. They expect to pay for the Joshuas. Obviously, look at Klitschko versus Joshua. That wasn't even on pay TV, and that was a mammoth fight. And that wasn't on pay TV in the U.S. That wasn't on pay TV at all. So if Klitschko versus Joshua is not on pay TV, well, why the heck? Fans are asking, why the heck is Derevyanchenko versus Charlo card on not on pay TV? Why are we having to pay for that? So a lot of these fans obviously don't know, and that's why you're listening in, fans. You don't know the business side, and a lot of them aren't thinking about the business side. But there is definitely a rhyme to the reason behind all of this. And the bottom line is, that's the best they can do right now in the changing times. But eventually something's going to have to give. But again, it's like Dan Raphael had said, like you said a few weeks ago. The bottom line comes to this. You're going to pay the big money for the big names. And fans, whether casual fans or hardcore fans, I'm not sure if they're looking at 1 versus 2. They're just looking at the overall spectacle of things, right? And the overall spectacle, the overall optics, Derevyanchenko versus Charlo, is not this massive fight, between 2 major stars. Although it's a great matchup, it's not Triple G versus Golovkin. Although this fight could very well be better. These fights could be better than those fights. But in terms of name recognition, in terms of overall stock, these guys aren't Triple G versus Golovkin. And I think that's what fans, even some of the hardcore fans, are thinking about.
Lee, and as a result, and once again, it's going up head-to-head against the UFC 253 event, right, in which they're featuring 2 undefeated middleweights going against each other, and one of them being a very popular fighter right now. And then, if just to make things worse for boxing, Lakers are going to be playing the Nuggets at the exact same time on free TV in an elimination game to see who goes to the NBA Finals. That's not good, Lee. And, and that's another thing. You look at the start time of this. Now, once again, this is starting at 7 p.m. Eastern. That means the best fight of the evening, or the most anticipated fight of the evening, whether it plays out that way, it's still the most anticipated fight of the evening, is going to be aired, and the first bell is going to ring between 9 and 9:30. That is, I mean, and that's on the East Coast. On the West Coast,
yes,
the main event's going to be between 6 and 6:30 if you're in California or in Vegas. That's, in your opinion, do you think, I mean, this can only hurt sales, in my opinion. I know that they're trying to get people on board with more fights, and it's spaced out, and it's a full day of boxing, full evening of boxing. But if this is starting at 4 p.m. on the West Coast, do you think that's going to hinder or help sales, Lee, in your professional opinion?
It might not make a lot of difference. Here's why. Because, again, Charlo and Derevyanchenko, these guys aren't mainstream stars. It's not Canelo versus Triple G. You may not be losing a lot of viewership, okay? Obviously, the time change, they're ceding some to UFC, to the NBA. In case you want to catch one of those two events, they're making this boxing card earlier. At the end of the day, I think it's, 6 eggs in one hand, half a dozen in the other. Might help a little bit, might hurt a little bit here and there. At the end of the day, though, I don't see much of a difference because we're not talking about Canelo versus Triple G here. We're not really a lot of these guys. If you're an NBA fan or if you're a hardcore UFC fan, you're going to watch those over Charlo versus Derevyanchenko because it's not Joshua versus Ruiz. It's not Joshua versus Klitschko. So I can't really say whether it'll help or hurt just because these aren't massive names. I will say too though, Joseph, you might have some fans who come in who might miss that first hour but still buy it. Just to see, maybe because all they want to see, they're really focused on those two big fights. Maybe those two big fights and one of the preliminary bouts. So you still get 3 fights. A lot of people would be satisfied with just that. And a lot of people don't even watch those initial bouts anyway. So I really don't think you're going to lose a lot.
In my opinion, Lee, and this is just my opinion, I think it's going to make a huge difference on the West Coast. If you're out and about, spending the day with the family, and you come home and you're already missing most of the, like say you come in and you turn it on and you come in at 7 and you turn it on and, the fight's already on. Well, that's the best fight of the evening. That's the most anticipated fight of the evening. I think they made a huge miscalculation and a big mistake in placing the most anticipated even money fight first with a 6 or 6:30 start time on the West Coast. In my opinion, that's just damn foolish.
Do you want to go head-to-head with NBA and UFC, though? If it's later, then you're going head-to-head with NBA and UFC.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes, guys. But nonetheless, tomorrow night, the pay-per-view starts with a 7 p.m. Eastern start time. So expect the fight between Derevyanchenko and Charlo to begin between 9 and 9:30 Eastern. We need your picks, Lee. Let's take a look. Once again, the very first major fight, Jermall Charlo. He is listed right now, and the numbers are widening. The odds are widening. There's more money being laid on Jermall Charlo, so they're actually widening the odds to increase betting on Sergey Derevyanchenko. So the odds have widened just a bit because the money is going in on Charlo. And so he's listed right now as a minus 180 or an almost 2-to-1 betting favorite now, with Sergey Derevyanchenko being listed as a plus 150. And that's going to be for the WBC Middleweight Championship. Right. Mr. Cleveland, how do you see this fight playing out? Who wins and why?
This is one of the toughest fights. This fight has so many wrinkles, Joseph. It's really hard to say. I like the safe bet, which is Charlo by decision. But I'll tell you why. I think it's because if the fight's anywhere near close, I see Charlo being the A side. I see Charlo landing the showier, more eye-catching punches. I see him getting the benefit of the doubt. So and I see Derevyanchenko with a very good chin. I don't think Charlo can take him out of there. So I see that as the safest bet right there. Charlo in a decision, close decision, possibly controversial decision. But again, Charlo's never been in the ring with someone like Derevyanchenko, with over 400 amateur bouts, Joseph. We saw how skilled he was against Triple G. I wrote an article, 5 reasons Triple G will lose to Derevyanchenko, and he almost did. Triple G said himself before the fight, I'm a little scared of this guy, and for good reason. I still think, even though the safe bet is for Charlo by decision, I still think a lot of people are underestimating Derevyanchenko. They're looking at his record, and his professional record, which isn't that impressive. He's got those 2 losses and like 13 wins or something. And they're looking at the size difference, the height difference, and they're really discounting Derevyanchenko. And that could play into his hands. This guy's had 2 close, razor-thin losses to Daniel Jacobs and Triple G. This guy's a bad man. This guy's a very bad man. Safe pick Charlo in 12, but I'm not gonna touch this fight because, I wouldn't be surprised if Derevyanchenko got him out of there in the mid rounds.
Yeah, this is, and once again, guys, we talked about the betting on this, and my odds article is going to be out later this evening on the FightSaga.com. Guys, this one, and I advised everyone, if you're going to bet, don't bet on this fight because Las Vegas isn't paying out nearly enough to make it worth your while and to risk your hard-earned money. I'm looking at the under, which is 10.5 rounds is a plus 245, but I don't see, just like you, and looking at these guys' proven durability, their athleticism, their mental toughness as well, I don't see either man stopping anybody. I see this one going to the distance as well, and I'm picking Jermall Charlo for the same reasons. Even though he's going to get outworked in the great majority of the rounds, he's going to have that Canelo syndrome with the judges at ringside. He combines speed with power, and he's very explosive. So he's going to throw the more eye-catching shots to the judges. Now remember, once again, guys, you're looking at clean, effective, and consequential punches. The ones that are going to seem more consequential to the judges at ringside are the ones that have the most impact, the ones that have more crack in their shot, so to speak. And that's what Emmanuel Stewart used to characterize or describe it as. They have more crack in their shot. So, I like it for that reason. Jermall Charlo winning a very close and controversial decision, right? And once again, guys, I can already anticipate that we're going to be discussing the judging next week. This time next week, we're going to be talking about the judges at ringside and how they scored these bouts. So we both like Jermall Charlo in a decision. Boy, that's consistent with the Teddy Atlas curse now, isn't it? Because Teddy picked Sergey Derevyanchenko to pull off the mild upset. And once again, guys, is Sergey Derevyanchenko right now, according to the book at the MGM Grand, Sergey Derevyanchenko is listed as a plus 150. So that means if you bet $100, you win $150. Imagine that, Lee.
I'm not touching this.
Well, I tell you what.
I'm not touching it.
No, and we don't advise anyone to touch it. Just enjoy the fights. Just make your popcorn, get your cold beverage, and enjoy the fights. Don't worry about betting. Now, Jermell Charlo versus Jason Rosario. Oh, that's a different story. You look at Jermell Charlo versus Jason Rosario, and and once again, and this is going to blow your mind, Lee, when I tell you this. The odds are getting wider to the point where Vegas bookies are giving Conor McGregor better odds against Manny Pacquiao. And we're going to talk about this in just about 5 or 10 minutes. But right now, Jermell Charlo is listed as a minus 450 a 4.5-to-1 betting favorite with Jason Rosario listed as a plus 360 according to the MGM Grand bookie, right? I'm sorry, man. Even though I think Jermell, has an easy time with him if he fights a disciplined, safety-first fight, I think he wins this easily if he chooses to do that. And if he fights him like he did Gabe Rosado several years ago, he wins this one easily, and it could be a virtual shutout. But I don't think he does it at this stage in his career. I think he's enamored with his power. I think he's enamored with that KO streak. And I think he's fixated on putting forth a KO performance in his first stint on pay-per-view. And I tell you what, that's very sporting of him. But I can see this one looking like Acelino Freitas versus Diego Corrales, in which Acelino Freitas was doing a brilliant job of boxing him, controlling range, using the entire ring, being the ring general, racking up points, racking up rounds, and then all of a sudden gets caught with a straight right hand by Diego Corrales and gets put on his ass, and it's over. I can see that happening in this fight, or I can see it ending like maybe Sergio Martinez versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., in which, he's once again having an easy day at the office, and then in the final round of the fight, he gets caught and dropped, 2 or 3 times? I can see it playing out like that, or Baby Joe Macy versus Vasily Zhirov, in which that same scenario played out. This is a very scary fight for Jermell Charlo. Jason Rosario, if he just touches you, his opponents seem to feel it in a bad way. Your thoughts on this? Who do you like and why, Lee?
Yeah, I like Charlo. This one's a little bit easier. I definitely like Charlo. Taking nothing away from Rosario, he had a great upset in his last outing against J-Rock. Looked good, scored the 5th round TKO. But I just think that overall Charlo is he's the overall better fighter. He is going to know, he already knows where this guy's coming from now. It's not a shock. We all know that this guy's for real. Whereas J-Rock fought him, like, who the heck is this? Hey, Son Rosario, who the heck is this? He surprised everybody. Well, now the book is out on this guy. The book is out on him. They're going to be ready for him. He's got a great record. He's beaten some decent fighters, but he's never really fought. Outside of J-Rock, he's never fought anyone anywhere close to Charlo. He has a knockout loss, 2017, and he's got a draw just as early as 2018 to someone. So I think the Charlo team, they're looking at those things like that wasn't too long ago. They're saying this guy is good, this guy can crack, but he's not quite ready for elite level. He's a top guy, but he's not ready for the elite level yet. That's what they're thinking. And that's what I think. I like Charlo by a convincing, although not dominant, decision. Give him 117, 111. Well,
I think, and once again, I can see it playing out that way exactly as you stated, but I think that you're wrong about them not looking past him. It was reported by Boxing Scene, and once again, this was a quote from the final press conference, right, in which Jermell Charlo's trainer, Derek James, he stated this, quote, I don't think the upset of J-Rock was a fluke. I think it was a phenomenal performance by Rosario, but I think it was more J-Rock than it was Rosario. I don't think J-Rock had a bad day, but he was distracted fighting out of his hometown. You could tell his focus just wasn't there. Maybe Rosario will prove me wrong or do his best to do it, but I truly believe it was more J-Rock than Rosario. Quote, or end quote. Lee, I think they're looking past this guy. I think that they think it's going to be an extremely easy day at the office. I think they're convinced that they had a much tougher time with Tony Harrison.
Well, they probably are. Again, looking at this guy's background, he's a good fighter, but like I said, we really don't know yet. We really don't know. He surprised the heck out of J-Rock, that's for sure. But is it because J-Rock had a bad night? Is it because this guy really is for real? Is J-Rock himself a little overrated? We don't know these things, and as you say, that's why they fight the fights. We're going to find out. But just looking at this, it just seems the skill level. And as Gogi would always say, I think as the time goes on, you're going to see a difference in skill, and it's going to from the first round to the 12th round, you're going to, especially from like maybe the third or fourth round on, you're going to see that skill level, that separation in skill, and that's why I like Charlo. I just like
indeed, and I think there is a huge disparity in skill level, but at least that's what I thought. And going back and watching the tape, and I watched the J-Rock fight again, and it's funny, I thought, okay, how did J-Rock lose to this guy? This guy is a clumsy, seemingly unathletic oaf, just following around someone with better skills. And then all of a sudden, he'll show you something very crafty, in which, boy, he'll slip and counter effectively with the overhand right, or he is slip and pull uppercut. And I'm like, wow, that was nice. I think his skill level is very underestimated and very misleading. His style, he's a very gangly, awkward fighter. He almost reminds me of the Pink Panther in the ring. He looks like the Pink Panther. Big feet, tall, gangly, looks very awkward. But, boy, he's got the gift of the heavy hands.
Kind of like Robert Hellenius.
Yeah, he looks very unintimidating, but he's a very dangerous fighter. I think this is how it's going to play out. And even if you think Jermall's going to win, guys, the odds are way too enticing to pass up here. Jason Rosario is a plus 360, and this is a unification bout. Guy with heavy hands. If I have money to burn or money to be able to play with, yeah, I'm putting a couple $100 on Jason Rosario. Once again, guys, if you put $100 down on Jason Rosario, okay, you win $360. You put $1,000 on Jason Rosario, you win $3,600. That's a nice payday, man. So even if you think Charlo is going to win, that might not be a bad bet if you have money to play with. Now, once again, guys, we're not telling you what to do. You should follow your own opinion, right? But yeah, this bet is too enticing to pass up in my book. Yeah, I'm more than likely going to put something on a Jason Rosario straight-up victory. And to be honest with you, I can see him stopping Jermell Charlo. I could see it playing out this way, where he's kind of toying with him, and then all of a sudden gets cracked with a sharp left hook, and he can't recover. And Harvey Dock, the third man of the ring, waves it off. And I see that happening possibly at maybe around 9, 10, or 11. Anyway, it's going to be an interesting night of boxing on Saturday night. So you like Jermall or Jermell with a UD victory as well, or do you see him maybe stopping Jason Rosario?
No, I like the UD victory. You know what? You don't really want to. If he gets a chance to knock out Rosario, he'll take it. But I can't see him going for the KO. I see a safety first, more of a safety first fight. He wants to look impressive, like you said, but at the same time, we've seen this guy. He can bang a little bit. So, yeah, I like the safety first a decision. But everything you said, Joseph, makes sense. He could catch him, but based on, what the trainer said and just based on what I'm seeing, I think they see something in Rosario. And I think that they see something that they think that they can expose, and they're not overly concerned about this fight. And that might bite them in the ass in the end, but I definitely think that they see something.
Yeah, I've read several reports from other boxing writers in which they liken Jason Rosario to Julius Ndungo, the gentleman who Terrence Crawford knocked out in brutal fashion to unify the 140-pound weight division. Well, we'll see. Guys, it goes down tomorrow night once again, 7 p.m. Eastern start time, 4 p.m. Pacific, and that's going to be for the bargain basement price of $75. My, oh, my. But I tell you what, PBC is doing a great job of, well, reminding everyone that this is the Charlo show, and the Charlos are indeed the A side. If you're Jason Rosario and Samson Lukowicz, right, are you a bit put off that your man isn't on the marquee? And have you ever seen anything like this in a major fight, Lee?
Never, not in a major fight, not in a fight like this, especially when an opponent is as revered as Derevyanchenko and someone has titles like Rosario. I've never seen it. Never. It's definitely the Charlo show. Am I upset by it? Hey, if I'm Rosario or Derevyanchenko, it's just going to make me angry. It's just going to make me, want to beat that ass a little bit more. Now I'm coming in. I'm angry because I'm not even on the poster. Yeah, that's a slide. That's a huge slide right there. Honestly, yeah. Do you really want to motivate these guys any more than they already are? No. No, you don't. But you can see what they're trying to do. They're really trying to make this. They're trying to sell this as like these twins, these great twins, these brothers, whatever. And yeah, I'm looking at the poster right now. It's crazy. It's just Charlo and Charlo.
And you look for the opponents, and
they were fighting each other. If you didn't know any better.
Exactly, and their names are in such small print, Lee. You look at Rosario's name and Derevyanchenko's name; they're tiny, like you can barely see it on the marquee.
Where's my magnifying glass?
Oh, goodness gracious! But I tell you what, all credit goes to Tom Brown, matchmaker extraordinaire. Boy, he did an amazing job with the money that he had to work with. And once again, and this is billed, and Steven Espinosa's beating his chest saying, oh, look at how many title fights are on here. Guys, yes, they're title fights, but you look at, and this is one thing I always try to tell everyone. If you think it's going to be a good fight, go look at the odds. And this is one of the reasons why we stress the odds when sizing up any of these matchups. Look at how the handicappers see it. Look how wide the odds are. You look at the race and sports books. Let's look at some of these preliminary bouts. And once again, these are all very fan-friendly style matchups, but they're not going to be all that competitive at the end of the day. You look at the opening bout. You look at Casimero versus Micah. Casimero is listed as a 7-1 betting favorite, with Micah listed as a 5-1 betting underdog. You look at Daniel Roman versus Juan Carlos Baiano, an excellent style matchup with Daniel Roman obviously being the bigger, stronger guy, and he's a 13-1 betting favorite, with Baiano being a 7-1 betting underdog. Now, here's the kicker. Oh, Brandon Figueroa, that's a big title fight. Boy, he's fighting Damian Vasquez. And Brandon Figueroa is the incumbent title holder, and he's a 50-1 betting favorite, with Vasquez being a 12-1 betting underdog, which basically means he's got a puncher's chance, if any. Right? So once again, credit to Tom Brown for sticking and finding title holders with entertaining style matches. But guys, these aren't going to be that competitive at the end of the day. I'll be shocked if we see anything that resembles an upset tomorrow. But hey, we're getting the fights though for the two main events, and that's the bottom line. Lee, we're about to run out of time. Well, we've got 15 minutes left, and we still have a lot of ground to cover in several other events, right? Big news, brother. Big news. Well, before we move to this, I do have to get your opinion on this. Now, once again, we've seen the emotional nature of these brothers, and sometimes it can be a strength and a weakness. It can be a blessing or a curse for an entertainer, especially a prize fighter. If you had to guess which one's going to be most emotional during their fight and which one it's going to potentially get the better of, do you think the emotional aspect there and the intangible is going to come into play to either Charlo twin?
Explain the intangible. What do you mean?
Something that you really can't put your finger on. The intangible of, well, how emotional these guys get. Their mental, like when you hear them during interviews, they seem almost emotionally fragile. Even though, both Charlos seem to have a good poker face in the ring while they're fighting. But obviously, the emotional nature of Jermall, it affected him when his brother lost against Matt Korobov, and I thought he lost that fight. Do you think that's going to come into play on Saturday night to either fighter?
Well, it could, depending on what happens in the ring in the first fight. Certainly, it very could. The first fight, if someone loses or if someone maybe wins but gets badly beaten up, it could. And then conversely, if there's a dramatic knockout in the first fight, maybe that could amp, the brother in the second fight. So yeah, all those things will come into play. And I definitely think, though, Joseph, what happens in one fight will have at least a small, will be to a small degree, impact the second fight. So again, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, continue, because I'm going to move on to the next topic after this.
I think these guys feed off each other. They feed off each other. So if one guy's hype, then I think the other guy's going to be hype going into it. Real quick, let me give you an example. When you're watching a football game, right, and maybe one team is on a scoring spree, or they've come back to score this great touchdown and they're back in the game. Have you ever noticed the kicker, usually just knocks it out of the end zone, on the ensuing kickoff? I think it's that kind of excitement.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Yeah, It's that everybody's cheering. You're at home. You've just went ahead late in the fourth quarter. That kicker's all fired up and charged up, Joseph. Boom, he knocks it out of the end zone. Touchback. It could have that effect. Again, but just like it could have that effect, it could have the opposite effect if the first brother gets starched, or if he loses, or if he wins, but it's really controversial, or he gets hurt, or he gets busted up. So yeah, I definitely look. These guys feed off each other. So one fight should have some significance or some impact on the second fight.
I agree. And, it's funny. What if Derevyanchenko pulls off an Alexander Povetkin and just knocks his brother out cold? How do you see actually Jermell reacting from this? Do you think he can keep it together to perform at the pinnacle of his abilities?
Of course.
If anything like that happens.
Yeah, of course. I'm not saying that would affect the outcome, but again, I think you're looking at a more tentative fighter then.
Yep.
If Derevyanchenko KOs Charlo, you're looking at his brother. He's going to go in there. Yeah, he's going to think twice before going for that KO. He's going to be a little bit more tentative. He's going to try to rack up those points. Yeah, because you definitely don't want a situation where these guys both go home losers. Because they're feeding off each other. They're feeding off each other.
So let me ask.
And that's what
let me ask you this.
The poster.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
Again, the promoters want that. They want one guy success, one guy to feed off the other guy. So that two-headed monster can't lose. One is bad enough, but then if they both lose on the same night, that could be the end of the two-headed monster for a while.
Well, maybe yes, maybe no, and that's what I was going to ask you. What happens if both Charlo brothers win? What happens if both Charlo brothers lose? In my opinion, this is, if you're going to lose, boy, it should be right now because no one's going to see this fight. If this were on Fox, I'd say, well, it's going to be of great consequence because, well, there are going to be at least 2 to 3 million people tuning in. If it's on the flagship station, Fox, home of The Simpsons, home of the NFL, then, yeah, you're in trouble. Your career's in dire straits. But if you lose with only 100 to 150,000 people watching, yeah, I don't think it's of any consequence. I think you just regroup and come back stronger. Your thoughts on my theory?
Well, it still goes on your record there, Joseph. You know how boxing fans are like, how these crazy boxing fans are so caught up in record. It still goes on your record. You still have that blemish. It's still a major setback. If both of these guys lose, that is a huge, I think it would still be a significant setback, yes. And if you're the promoter, you're selling this as like the two-headed monster. If one guy lost, it would be a setback. I think it would be a minimal setback to both if one guy lost, unless the other guy won in some such dramatic fashion. But look at it this way. Because these guys feed off each other, imagine if Jermall Charlo wins tomorrow night, Jermell Charlo, who's fighting Rosario, loses. Let's just say loses by a easy decision. If Jermall Charlo went on to fight and beat Triple G or Canelo, well, that's going to raise Jermell's stock as well a little bit because they're both feeding off each other. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, I agree.
So that's what I'm saying, that, one would be bad, but two would be really bad, just because of that blemish. You got that blemish on that record. You know how the fans are. Oh, look,
yeah.
Two losses? What? Oh, rubbish. He lost to who? Jason? Who? Oh, that's rubbish, man. Like those casual fans would be like, no.
Point taken, brother. Point taken. I tell you what, it's going to be interesting, though, guys. With a start time, once again, at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, the Charlo pay-per-view is going to begin for the low price, $75. Thanks for playing, guys. So I tell you what, let's move on to the next topic, and this one's kind of a shocker. Lee, we just saw via Twitter, Conor McGregor was going at it, talking about some failed negotiation with UFC, and then he just dropped this bomb saying, you know what, it's all good. I'm going to be fighting Manny Pacquiao in the Middle East anyway. So it's all watered under the bridge. And he let it slip that indeed he was going to be fighting Manny Pacquiao. And lo and behold, I go look at the books. Once again, the MGM Race and Sports book, and they already have odds posted for Manny Pacquiao versus Conor McGregor for Diriyah, Saudi Arabia. The house that Joshua built, right?
Right.
You want to hear these odds? Listen to this. Manny is currently opening as a minus 450 or a 4-1 betting favorite, with Conor McGregor listed as a very live plus 325 betting underdog. He is a 3.25 to 1 betting underdog. Can you believe that odds are this tight? Now, I understand when they fight, more than likely it's going to be in January. More than likely, Manny Pacquiao is going to be 42 years old. Conor McGregor is only 32. I understand that. I understand that Conor is also 5'9". Manny Pacquiao is 5'6" on a good day. I understand that. But we're talking about Conor McGregor. He's not a boxer. Now, he may be a proficient striker in the UFC, But you're talking about him going again against the sports-only 8-division world champion and a real legend like Manny Pacquiao. Have people lost their minds, Lee? And why do you think the odds are this tight to open?
Well, because some people really think that they think that the Mayweather McGregor fight was a real showing.
Oh my word!
He gave Floyd a great fight. And it was a very entertaining fight. But anybody that knows boxing, of course, like James Gogi, myself, we saw what was going on when Floyd was just stationary the whole fight, pretty much, and then all of a sudden, Floyd bets the over and under for 10 rounds, and he gets a 10th round knockout. Oh, okay, right.
Yeah, that's a coincidence, right?
Just a coincidence, right? So I think a lot of people still think that they believe in Conor McGregor. They think that they think that he'd be a top boxer if he boxed. A couple of things going on here, though. Number one, like you said, Manny's 42. He will not have fought, I guess. When was his last fight? Against Keith Thurman in June?
Against Keith Thurman, September of last year.
A year and a half. He's 42. He's in the Senate. He's got presidential aspirations. He's got a lot going on. Number one. Number two, I'm just looking at the intangibles here. Number two, McGregor looked a lot bigger than Floyd, like several divisions greater than Floyd. And Floyd looked bigger than Manny when they fought. Yep. So I don't even know the size disparity is. I think it's going to be a lot more than 3 inches. Like I know these guys are listed as one thing, but I know that Conor definitely looked a lot bigger than Floyd. Floyd looked bigger than Manny. So when these guys fight, Pacquiao's going to look tiny. Now that said, conventional wisdom says that this should be an easy win for Manny. You just hope for the sake of boxing that Pac-Man doesn't take this fight lightly. You just hope, because we'll never hear the end of it if McGregor wins. If he happens to get lucky and catch him with like a counter, one of those Barrera, if he catches him with the Marquez counter, if he times him right or whatever, we'll never hear the end of it. But no, the odds should be like. I don't even know there should be odds on this.
It should
fight,
be
really.
like Brandon Figueroa versus Daniel Vasquez, 50-1.
Right. Exactly.
Like here's where the betting should start. Does Manny Pacquiao KO him in the first, the second, or the third?
Exactly.
Because if it's a real fight and Manny Pacquiao doesn't carry McGregor like Floyd Mayweather did, not even throwing a punch until round 4, right? If he doesn't carry McGregor, I can see him splitting his lip within the first 30 seconds.
Right.
Like, I can't imagine this.
Even at 42.
Even at 42. Look, he could be Tyson's age, and he would still kick McGregor's ass.
Of course, he should. In this case, I'm concerned that Manny might be taking him lightly. I think Manny might be looking at this, and I don't want him to take this too lightly, because you never know. McGregor is a very good athlete.
And he is a fighter.
He's a fighter. They could be working on one shot.
This isn't Logan Paul. He's still a fighter. Yeah.
Right. And they could be working on is a counter right hand. The same thing that Marquez is. That's all they're working on. And if Manny gets caught, you wouldn't want him to get caught flush with anything like that. And, he's going to go in there. He's not going to have much respect for McGregor. Certainly not as much respect as he had for Marquez. You don't want Manny to go in there just thinking like, okay, well, I've deserved this easy paycheck. Yes, this is an easy fight. I'm not going to train for it. I'm a half-ass train for it. You don't want anything like that to happen again, because you don't want McGregor to look good. Now, as far as carrying him, though, Manny's the type that would carry him too. I can't see Canelo doing that, but I can see Manny. We saw Floyd doing that. I can see Manny carrying him. I can see them saying, okay, give the fans a little show. Give them a little show. Don't knock them out immediately, and then knock them out at the end. But this is boxing, man. You don't really want to do that.
I don't see that happening with Manny. I don't see that happening with Manny, because the last thing he wants to do is give this loudmouth idiot any confidence going into the, say, mid to late rounds. I don't see it happening. I see Manny Pacquiao kicking his ass and making a statement. That's what I see. I don't see him going the route of Floyd Mayweather Jr. I mean, he may, but I don't.
He's a nice guy. He's a nice guy. I'm like, okay, I carry him. Okay.
You know what? Let's wait until the press conference. He didn't have any quarter against Keith Thurman after telling him he was going to crucify him.
That's a real fight. Now, if McGregor...
No, I understand that, but think about how the press events are going to be for this.
Right.
McGregor's going to be a loudmouth buffoon, and he's going to piss Manny off. I can see that happening, and Manny just laying the wood to him.
Right. If he talks about God or religion, that would be bad. That would be suicide. But if he just says, "Oh, this guy's a jerk," or "This guy's just some Filipino, he's nothing," he's overrated. Well, that's the typical smack talk. Oh, he's overrated. He can't do this. He's old. Blah 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 blah. But if he gets personal with him, and maybe insults his faith, or insults his wife, or something like that, well, then I can see Manny coming out. But I mean, Manny's he's a good-natured guy. That's sad. I can really see him. I can see him carrying McGregor. I can just see him. Oh, for the fans, I let him go for the fans. I'm trying to. I'm imitating you.
I'll tell you how I could see it,
imitating him. I'm imitating you, imitating him.
I'll tell you. Well, let me give you my impression, and I'll remind you. I could see him saying, I have much respect for Mr. Conor McGregor, but I'm going to remind him of my Filipino power and do my best to stop him within the distance.
Yeah, maybe. We know this. We know that a guy, he's not going to. McGregor's not going to fight a young fighter in his prime. We know that, and we know. Canelo is not that personality. Canelo would just take him out in a round, take him out in the first 2 minutes. I have no concern about Canelo. It's just that, with Manny, and you just don't know, and you hope that he goes in there at that fire. Are you afraid
that it becomes a Jeff? Are you afraid that it becomes somewhat of a Jeff Horn mugging or mauling, and he headbutts Manny Pacquiao and takes him? Because one thing I've noticed, and you look at the Jeff Horn fight, you look at the Eric Morales fight several years back. When Manny gets cut, boy, he gets taken out of his element and he gets off his game. In both those fights, it's no coincidence that he lost, and he becomes a little preoccupied with the blood and the cut. He doesn't like getting cut. He doesn't like his own blood, and it's a huge distraction, and it's not the same Manny Pacquiao. I think.
Right. And then you got this sort of grappling, like Horn did, this ugly grappling. I think you're going to see McGregor take a page from that. That's his thing. This grappling and grabbing, and you know how they do that. The holding and the tackling, and I think we're going to see all that. Like it might be like Povetkin versus Klitschko, a little bit.
Conor McGregor does have a history of picking on midgets.
That's right. That's funny.
I'm sorry, guys. I tell you what. We'll wait and see when this happens. But according to Sean Gibbons, and we're going to have him on the show once this is announced. According to Sean Gibbons, he says that yes, this fight, it's not official, and the deal isn't completed, but it's very close for the same outdoor venue that featured Anthony Joshua versus Andy Ruiz Jr. And, apparently these guys have deep pockets, and they're willing to pay for this. In the words of DAZN.
From a promotional stance, it makes sense. From a promotional stance. Who's making that
Absolutely. So would you call Conor McGregor a premium opponent, Lee?
Well, it depends on yes and no. In some ways, yeah. And if if you're the hey, on the business end, very premium opponent. As far as the matchup end, absolutely not. So he's yes and no, a premium opponent. But if you have the business end, yeah, that's hey, if I'm DAZN, hey, I want to broadcast that. I'll be all over that. You know.
Yeah, look, the primary reason, Lee, why I think Manny Pacquiao lays the wood to him, because Manny Pacquiao is still very competitive with Floyd Mayweather Jr., right? He wants to knock him out and put forth a more convincing victory than Floyd Mayweather Jr. did, taking him 10 rounds, right?
I see. That makes sense. I didn't think about that. That's a good point. I
think Manny Pacquiao wants to make an example and say and call out immediately Floyd Mayweather as a golden parachute fight for both gentlemen.
Right. That makes sense, Joseph. Now I can see him saying, "Yeah, hey, I did it much better than Mayweather. Hey, Floyd, come at this. Let's get it on. I knocked him out in 1 round. It took you 10. Let's see what's happening. Let's fight today." I can definitely see him using that as some sort of leverage. And again, though, it's like, well, who does Manny fight though right now? Really, there's not. You're not going to put him against Crawford or Spence right now, are you? You're not going to put him.
No, hell no.
I don't think the third.
Hell
fight,
no. To be honest with you, even Mikey Garcia is a risky style matchup, and I think it's one that possibly Manny loses. Because of, Garcia's just proficiency in countering effectively. It would be a lot like fighting Juan Manuel Marquez, but a more economical and resourceful Juan Manuel Marquez. Boy, that's a scary, scary assignment for Manny Pacquiao at age 42.
Exactly. So you don't really have a lot of options. Also, I will say this. So this fight is, I'm pretty sure it's going to happen, based on just the optics of everything, just based on the background with everything. I'm pretty sure it's going to happen because Manny doesn't have any fights. And maybe Conor should have some fights in UFC, but maybe he doesn't want to fight that one guy again. Khabib, I don't know. But it's going to be a big fight. It won't be as big as Mayweather versus Pacquiao or Mayweather versus Conor. But I think it'll be up. It might be the biggest fight. Could possibly be the biggest grossing fight of 2021, maybe.
Well, I'll say this: if Tyson Fury
one that might gross more.
That's what I'm saying. If Tyson Fury doesn't fight Anthony Joshua in 2021, which if everything is back to normal by this time next year, that fight is almost a certainty. In fact, you might see if Tyson Fury is successful in December. On December 19th, you may see Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury fight twice next year. That is easily the biggest money fight in boxing, right?
Yep.
Bigger than anything else. Clash of the British Titans.
Right, and I think Joshua versus Fury now is a bigger fight than Joshua versus Wilder. Even if Wilder were to win, I still think that's still the biggest fight. So if you're Anthony Joshua, you want that money, I think you want to fight Tyson. If you're going after the money, you want to fight Tyson Fury.
Absolutely. So let's go to our next topic. Lee, Canelo Alvarez offered $20 million per fight by DAZN in negotiations and arbitration. And once again, we called this several weeks ago, right? Basically stating that Canelo, this was a warning shot, the lawsuit filed. And hearing Lou DiBella talk about this, and once again, Lou DiBella is an attorney, a very, very smart guy, Harvard Law graduate, former executive for HBO Sports. He knows boxing and he knows law. He had this to say. He stated, look, obviously Canelo, the way this was filed, it was so sloppily filed that Canelo never had any intention of seeing this thing through. He just basically wanted to open the lines of communication, and that's understandable. That's the right thing to do, and it worked. So right now, DAZN, Golden Boy, and Canelo have been negotiating. And so DAZN has come up with a $20 million per fight deal that's incentive-based. So it's basically like a pay-per-view in which if you exceed a certain number of subscriptions for your fights, then you get more money. Do you think Canelo's going to take this and decide to work with DAZN?
Absolutely. Where is he going to get that money anywhere else? Absolutely. And I think you were exactly right. You hit the nail on the head a few weeks ago, Joseph. Team Canelo was just throwing caution to the wind. They had no real intent, but they wanted to make sure that some semblance of that contract was still in play. They basically want to say, you're not going to get away with everything. We just want to make sure that, we're going to follow through on it, but you can't walk away from this. And maybe they were hoping, Joseph, that they wouldn't use that line that you talked about, and just that line that says basically you can just forego everything, right?
They're talking about a force majeure.
Right. So maybe this was a reason they did that, to see if DAZN would try to enforce force majeure. But anyway, no, Canelo's going to take it because no one's going to pay him $20 million per fight. And regardless of who he fights, shoot, come on. Seriously? He's not going to get that money anywhere else. So he's going to be able to...
Look, I don't think it's...
The WBC top contender and still get $20 million. Well, that works right into his hands. He just gets $20 million for fighting a guy that's not threatening. And if he wants to take bigger money and bigger threats, if he wants to take bigger money, he's got to take a bigger threat and step up to, maybe one of the Charlos or step up to Golovkin. So it makes total sense to me. There's no reason he shouldn't.
Absolutely. And just to kind of get back at DAZN and say, sure, I'll fight Gennady Golovkin Cinco de Mayo next year, but I'll tell you what, in November, I think we should fight for the vacant WBC 168-pound title against Avni Yildirim.
Yep.
That's what I would do if I'm Canelo.
Yep. Exactly.
I tell you what, Canelo would be a damn fool to turn this down. He gets 100%, final decision on whomever he fights, $20 million guaranteed, as long as he agrees to fight Gennady Golovkin in Cinco de Mayo next year. Then I said, hey, as my comeback fight, I'm going to fight Avni Yildirim in November.
Yep.
Get a date for me. $20 million. Thank you, DAZN. Appreciate it, brother. Because, $20 million to fight the Turkish punching bag.
Right. It's a soft touch. But hey, it'll be great if you're DAZN. You're saying, well, you know what? At least we could use this as a way to market him, just like maybe Rocky Fielding. We can just show highlights of this, and people will say, yeah, he looked great in November. But then again, I guess you'd have to have another fight in the interim, right? He'd have to fight again before he fought in September. He'd have to fight in May.
No, that's why I'm saying Cinco de Mayo. That's May. I think it's next year, May 3rd, maybe.
Okay, right.
This Saturday, the Cinco de Mayo weekend, right? That's a huge Mexican holiday, May 5th. For those of you who don't know Spanish, that's the 5th of May.
There you go.
September is Mexican independence, right?
Right. That's right.
So, once again, I can see him easily I can see him easily, after fighting Golovkin, fighting the winner of a unification bout between Billy Joe Saunders and Callum Smith.
But that's a tough fight, though.
Again, of course it's a tough fight. Absolutely. But you know what? Look, if you're gonna make $20 million, right? The days of Canelo Alvarez, if he wants to be the big pay-per-view badass, well, the days of having easy fights are long gone. It's just like the Charlo brothers. Once again, it's promotions 101.
Right.
Heyman has already tried giving the Charlo brothers soft touches, and it hasn't been working in increasing their market value. So you have no choice but to apply the Juan Manuel Marquez method of increasing your market value, which is, boy, you stick them in tough. There's a saying in promotions, right? And Don Chargan taught me this. You take care of your ticket sellers and you stick your non-ticket sellers in tough. That's the only way you're going to be able to increase their market value. And once again, Juan Manuel Marquez is a perfect example of that. They couldn't figure out, Top Rank, Zanfer Promotions, they couldn't figure out at all why Juan Manuel Marquez wasn't nearly as popular as Marco Antonio Barrera or Eric Morales. Couldn't figure it out. Oh, wow, what is it? Well, it's because of the way he fought. He was a boxer puncher to begin his career. He wasn't a guy who sat in the pocket and traded like he ended up doing. And so they stuck him in tough. And he turned into one of the more fan-friendly fighters of boxing. His wars with Juan Diaz, Manny Pacquiao, Michael Katsidis. Oh, my word. It's like whenever you saw Marquez fight, you knew you were in for a war.
Right.
And he became one of the biggest stars of boxing as a result.
Yep. But again,
I'm sorry, your comments on that, Lee? Your thoughts on that?
He's already on top of Mount Olympus, though.
That's right.
He's already passed that. So,
if
you're going to give him $20 million for anybody, I think he might fight one or two hard fights, but I can't see him fighting two hard fights in a row. He'll fight this Turkish guy maybe in November, and then fight Triple G either in May or September. But I think that if he fights him in September, I think you're looking at a soft touch in May, and then Triple G, or then Triple G in May, and then a soft touch in September, and then a guy like Billy Joe Saunders and Callum Smith. I don't see him going two hard fights in a row. I really don't. If they're giving
what about this?
If they truly are giving him that option.
Well, if Jermall is successful in putting forth a brilliant effort tomorrow night against Sergey Derevyanchenko, how about, Lee, Jermall Charlo versus Canelo Alvarez at Minute Maid Park in Houston, Texas, seating 35,000 fans?
Yeah, well, I don't know if at this day and age, I don't know if we can feel that, with the COVID restrictions, Joseph.
No, of course not. But obviously, things are starting to open up again. They're already having vaccination tests. I'm assuming that everything's going to be back to normal by Cinco de Mayo next year, which is May 5th, right? And then you're talking about...
Fight. I mean, that's a great fight. I still think that, depending on how Charlo looks against Derevyanchenko, Joseph, how does he look? If he looks brilliant, then they might look at that as a very risky fight. For $20 million, they might say, can we get somebody else for $20 million? Who else?
Oh, my gosh, and here we go again. See, this has to be ironed out, right? Or else we're going to be back in this same scenario another year and a half from now, right?
Of course.
That's how I see it, brother. This has to be straightened out. Because, come on. He has to want to work with DAZN.
Right. If you're going to give me $20 million per fight and you say I can name anybody I want, of course Canelo. Now, Canelo may not do it himself, but his handlers, they're going to look for Rocky Fielding. You might throw Triple G in there, then Rocky Fielding,
Oh, boy.
I think that's no, not all soft touches, because they want to be able to save some face, but I don't think you're going to see Canelo versus Charlo, and then Canelo versus Triple G, and then Canelo versus Callum Smith. That's one hell of a schedule right there, man. I don't think you're going to see not in that order, and not back to back to back. Again, I think you might see soft touch, Triple G, soft touch, Callum Smith,
boy,
soft touch.
Well, good luck.
Charlo.
Good luck in generating new subscriptions.
But you've already given.
You never know. You never know.
Right.
I mean, in this wacky industry, there is no rhyme or reason why anyone gravitates towards a certain fighter or a certain event. It just happens, or it doesn't.
Right. I mean, they were considering that guy with like the 5'7" or 5'8" guy that fought Callum Smith to a tough, controversial. Was Ryder? They were considering Ryder for a while, weren't they?
Yes,
Ryder?
John Ryder. That's right.
Right, and he lost.
And that's a great style matchup. That is an excellent fight.
But he's not that premium fighter. He's not that premium fighter as far as on the business side. But if you're Team Canelo, you may have watched video of him throughout his career. And it's like, you know what, this is sort of, we can beat this guy, we can expose this guy, for a number of reasons. So you might see Canelo versus John Ryder, and then hardcore fans like you might say, hey, it's a good fight, it's a hard fight, but that's not going to bring any subscriptions in.
Well, I tell you what, brother, you want to hear some news. You want to hear some news, brother, and once again, we'll revisit this, the Canelo story. We'll revisit this next week because he has to make a decision either way. Either he's going to agree to do this or he's going to properly file this lawsuit on Monday because the deadline, the 28th, is on Monday of next week. So we'll revisit this next week when we have a little bit more time. But let me just give you an update right now, boxing news, right? And this is regarding 2016 gold medalist Tony Yoka, who is right now 8-0 with seven knockouts, right? He just blasted Johann Duapa in one round. Deontay Wilder couldn't do that. Johann Duapa got knocked out in one round by Tony Yoka. How do you like that, Cleveland?
That's a tough man. That guy is like one of those journeymen that you can't knock that guy out with a baseball bat. Very impressive. Very impressive. Did Duapa get old overnight? Is Tony Yoka that good? Obviously, Yoka was the A side.
Mm-hmm.
Big, tall guy, the guy they were promoting. But he's definitely sending a message to the heavyweights, even the young ones. That's impressive. Like that's quite a statement maker. We'll have to see
I tell you what. I tell you what. Top rank. Tony Yoka.
He could be damaged. Duapa could be damaged goods. You never know.
Indeed.
It happens in boxing sometimes. You have these boxers who are great, good journeyman fighters, good, tough guys, and then they just hit a brick wall, and they just continue to get knocked out. They kind of, So I'm interested to see what Duapa does. Is he going to retire? What's he going to do to his next fight? I think a lot of what he does will that will show us how relevant this victory was for Yoka. Because, Duapa could have had it. He might be in there just for a paycheck now. Who knows?
That is very true. Yeah, he does have a lot of miles on the odometer. So, But congratulations to Tony Yoka. Improves his record to 8-0 with 7 knockouts. And he's in good hands with Top Rank, right? No one cultivates and nurtures fighters, nurtures stars better than Top Rank Boxing. Top Rank Inc.
Yes.
Bob Arum is the very best in the business at cultivating and nurturing a young fighter's career. But Lee, it looks like we're about that time.
The heavyweight division.
Go ahead,
hot,
sir.
Man. The heavyweight.
I love it.
The future for the heavyweight division looks great.
It could be the savior of boxing. We have about 5 minutes left. And can you believe we're going to have our first 90-minute show, Lee? My goodness.
My goodness.
So let me ask you this. Yeah, we've gone way over time, but let's make it an even 90 minutes. How about that?
Okay.
Your thoughts on December 19th? Again, they're waiting on Las Vegas, and if they can fit 15,000 fans in the new Raider Stadium in Las Vegas, the new Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, does Deontay Wilder have a chance to win the trilogy fight against Tyson Fury? Is Tyson Fury making the big mistake of looking past Deontay Wilder to Anthony Joshua?
Well, if either one of these guys are looking past, if Fury is looking past Joshua, he shouldn't be. Or if he's looking past Wilder, he shouldn't be. I don't think these guys just are looking past each other. I'm convinced that there's mutual respect, and certainly a lot of respect after the second fight. But even after the first fight, I think there's mutual respect. These guys, no. You know, Tyson Fury talks. He says a lot of stuff. He talks a lot of smack. But he's going to be very prepared for this fight with Wilder, and you know his team's going to be concerned. They're going to be confident, but concerned, prepared.
Yeah. I can't imagine Tyson Fury, everything that he's been through. I can't imagine him pissing away this opportunity at fighting in one of the biggest heavyweight matchups in history, and obviously it's going to be the highest grossing heavyweight fight in history. That's an almost guarantee. Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury, there's no way he would blow this, the biggest money fight in boxing, his retirement fund, as he calls it, by losing and looking past Deontay Wilder. I can't imagine it. So let me ask you this. What does Deontay Wilder have to do to win this fight? Or can he win this fight?
About this, man. I don't know. That's why the trainers can pay those big bucks, man. This is tough because, Fury's so tall. He's got that long reach. He moves so well. Upper body, lower body. His foot movement's excellent. You know, again, his torque is very good. You know, you can't hit him in the head. You know, he is. It's just he moves very well. He's not going to start you with one punch usually, but these guys are heavyweights. He does have formidable power. On the outside, you know, it seems Fury. On the inside, it seems Fury. You know, he's got a lot of inside.
Mm-hmm.
I think that obviously if you're Wilder, you're probably better off on the inside, but then again, that's not his strong point. But we've seen two fights now where it wasn't. I mean, we've seen Wilder get outboxed against Luis Ortiz twice, also.
Yeah.
You know, for the time those fights went on, and then we saw him get outboxed, and by Fury, and then outboxed and outbrawled by Fury in the rematch. I don't know. I mean, it's a very good question. Again, I would try to focus less on the right hand because he's going to be prepared for it. Work a little bit more on the left hook. Get some uppercut in there. You know, that's offensively. Defensively, man, how do you get away from that telephone pole jab?
Yep.
Man,
and he's
know.
so crafty with it. He uses it sporadically, and he mixes the torque, mixes the target. I mean, he works you to the body, the chest, and the head with that jab, and he'll sometimes just flick it out there, not even trying to hit you with it. He's so good with the jab.
The jab can blind you. The jab is a great defensive weapon.
Yep, sets up everything. It's your first line of defense.
Defensive weapon. Right.
Mm-hmm. Your first line of defense, and sets the table for your entire arsenal of punches. Yep, it's the most. Manuel Stewart had called it the most important punch in boxing. So I tell you what, Lee, we've got about a minute left before we hit the 90-minute mark. Very quickly, what is your projection for the amount of pay-per-views that the Charlo Twin Bill does tomorrow night?
Not a lot. Maybe 125,000.
You think it does maybe about the same as Vitaly Klitschko versus Danny Williams? Or you think it's even less? Do you think it's
maybe
Terrence Crawford versus Victor Postal?
I'm gonna backtrack. Maybe let's just go with 80,000.
Yeah, so you're thinking it's more in the Terrence Crawford, Victor Postal range. I agree with you. I think it's going to
80,000.
And look, I know guys, so I'm going to get the real numbers. I guarantee you, either they won't announce them or they're going to inflate the numbers, right? But no, we'll talk to some of our friends and we'll find the real number for you, guys. So rest assured, War Week Radio, FightSaga Radio, and Boxing 411 will give you the skinny. But Lee, we're running out of time very quickly. Do you have any parting shots for our listening audience?
Can't wait till next week. Can't wait for this fight card tomorrow. Fight fans, tune in. Support the sport.
Guys, he's Lee Cleveland. Go visit Box.Buzz, B-U-Z-Z, for all of the latest boxing news. Once again, guys, it is your hub for all of the major media outlets in boxing. And plus, it showcases our exclusive articles, guys. Don't forget to look for my head-to-head articles coming out later this evening, as well as my odds article. And don't forget the Teddy Atlas Curse is coming up tomorrow morning. Guys, so enjoy the fight Saturday night. Thank you so much for tuning in. And, guys, happy Friday evening, everybody.